My friend tried to use my wedding as a photo shoot, so I kicked her out. Weddings are supposed to be about love, celebration, and the coming together of two people in front of family and friends, right? Well, that's what I thought. But when my best friend Jessica tried to turn my wedding into her own personal photo shoot, I had to make a decision I never imagined I'd have to make. I had spent months planning the perfect day, and the last thing I wanted was for someone to take the spotlight from my fiancé and me. So, when Jessica crossed a line, I did the unthinkable. I kicked her out of my wedding. What happened after was a disaster, and I'm still wondering if I did the right thing. Planning a wedding is no small feat, especially when you're trying to balance your vision with the expectations of family and friends. I had always dreamed of a fairly traditional wedding, one where everything was just right. From the venue to the decor, I wanted every detail to reflect my personality. But most importantly, I wanted it to be about me and my fiancé. This was our special day, and nothing was going to ruin it. Enter Jessica, my best friend of over 10 years. We had been through everything together: high school drama, college parties, first jobs, and breakups. She was like a sister to me. That's why, when I got engaged, I immediately asked her to be my maid of honor. I couldn't imagine anyone else standing beside me. But as soon as the wedding plans started to take shape, I began noticing something strange. Jessica, who had always been supportive in the past, started to get a little possessive. She wasn't just interested in helping, she wanted to be in control. At first, I brushed it off as her being overly excited. After all, it was a big deal. But the more I thought about it, the more I began to feel like she was making the wedding about her, not about us. When I chose my wedding dress, she insisted on coming with me to every fitting, even though I had asked only my mom and sister to join me. It was little things like that that started to irk me. But again, I brushed it off. After all, this was my best friend, and she wanted to be involved. It wasn't until the bridal shower, though, that I started to see the first signs of what was to come. The bridal shower was supposed to be a light-hearted, fun celebration, something to kick off the countdown to the big day. I had planned it carefully, wanting it to be intimate, with just close friends and family. I knew everyone would be excited, but I also wanted to enjoy it without feeling like I was under a microscope. But as soon as we arrived at the venue, I could feel something was off. Jessica had organized everything, and while I appreciated the effort, it quickly became apparent that she was in charge of more than just the logistics. The theme, the guest list, even the way the seating was arranged, all of it screamed Jessica. Her influence was everywhere, and while it wasn't what I had envisioned, I didn't want to be difficult. I let it slide. The real kicker came when the party was in full swing. I was sitting at the head of the table, chatting with a few of my relatives when Jessica pulled me aside. "I think it's time for you to take a few solo photos," she said, a gleam in her eye. "You know, to make sure you get the perfect pictures for your wedding album." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I just want to make sure we capture the right moments. It's important that we get some professional shots, ones that really highlight how beautiful you look," she explained, her tone a little too enthusiastic. I wasn't sure where this was going. I hadn't asked for professional photos, and I certainly didn't want my bridal shower to turn into an impromptu photo session. "Jessica, we're here to celebrate, not to do a photo shoot," I said, trying to keep my tone light. But she wasn't hearing me. "Come on, just a few. It'll be great for Instagram and for the wedding album. Trust me, you'll thank me later." I sighed. I hated confrontation, especially with my best friend. I agreed reluctantly, thinking it would just be a few quick shots to satisfy her. But as soon as I stepped into the center of the room, she started directing me like I was a model. "Turn this way, tilt your head, smile more, hold the flowers just like this." At first, I tried to go along with it, not wanting to upset her. But the more she barked instructions, the more I started to feel like I was losing control of my own celebration. My friends and family were watching, and instead of joining in the fun, they were standing there like audience members to Jessica's perfect photo shoot. I felt embarrassed and self-conscious, and the frustration started to build. When the photo shoot finally ended, I was drained. I sat down with a sigh, trying to shake off the lingering unease. But Jessica didn't seem to notice my discomfort. She was already looking at the pictures on her phone, scrolling through them as though nothing had happened. "This is going to be perfect for the wedding album," she beamed, showing me the pictures. I plastered on a smile, not wanting to start an argument, but deep down, I knew that something was off. My wedding wasn't supposed to be about the perfect photos. It was supposed to be about the love and joy of the day. The next few days after the bridal shower were a blur. I tried to shake off the discomfort from the photo session, but it stayed with me. It felt like Jessica was more interested in turning everything into a spectacle for her own enjoyment than being supportive of my wedding and my wishes. The tension continued to grow as we got closer to the wedding day. Jessica kept bringing up the idea of more photos, wanting to capture every moment for the sake of the wedding album. It was clear that she had a vision of how the day should unfold, and it wasn't aligning with mine. Every time I made a suggestion or set a boundary, she dismissed it, as if my opinion didn't matter. But what really pushed me over the edge was when she asked if she could bring a professional photographer to the wedding. I mean, a second photographer. "I just think it would be great to get a variety of shots, you know," she said excitedly. "We could have one person focusing on you and my fiancé, and then another capturing everything else. I've already found someone who can do it for a good price." My jaw dropped. "Jessica, no. I already have a photographer, and that's it. You're not bringing in another person." She looked at me, a little stunned, but then quickly recovered. "But it'll be so much better. We can get all kinds of shots. Think about how great it will be for your album and for social media." The thought of the entire wedding being turned into a series of curated moments for social media was making me feel suffocated. It wasn't just the dress, the venue, or the decor that mattered. It was the feeling of the day. I didn't want someone following me around, snapping pictures at every turn, trying to capture something that wasn't real. I wanted to remember the day as it truly was, not as a photo shoot designed to impress others. "Jessica," I said, trying to keep my cool, "I don't want this to be about getting the perfect pictures. I want this day to be real, to feel like our day, not a set of Instagram moments." She seemed to bristle at my words. "Well, I thought you'd want to have everything documented perfectly. I mean, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing." I took a deep breath. "I know it's important, but it's not about perfection. It's about celebrating what's important to us." She crossed her arms and looked away. I knew she was frustrated, but I couldn't keep compromising my vision for my wedding just to keep her happy. That night, after a long day of phone calls and last-minute details, I began to feel that sinking feeling in my stomach. I had spent so much time trying to make everyone else happy. My family, my friends, the wedding planner, but in the process, I had lost sight of what I wanted. The wedding wasn't supposed to be an event for everyone else. It was supposed to be our celebration. It was then that I realized something crucial. I wasn't just fighting for my wedding anymore. I was fighting for my friendship with Jessica, and the boundaries I was setting weren't just for the day. They were about the long-term health of our relationship. If I didn't take control now, I risked losing everything I had worked so hard for. The following day, I woke up with a sense of dread in my chest. I had been trying to avoid this moment, but I knew it was inevitable. I couldn't keep letting Jessica run the show and push me into decisions I wasn't comfortable with. This wasn't just about photos anymore. It was about the way she was treating my wedding like her own personal project, and it had to stop. I texted her and asked if we could meet for lunch to talk. Her response came quickly. "Sure, what's this about?" I knew she could probably sense that something was off. She wasn't dumb, and she wasn't exactly the type to let things slide without pressing for more details. I took a deep breath and prepared myself for the conversation that was about to unfold. When we met at the cafe, I could see the excitement in her eyes, as if she thought we were about to make more wedding plans. I sat down across from her, and for a moment, I just stared at her. She looked just like she always had, so sure of herself, so ready to take charge. But today, I wasn't going to let her. "Jessica, I need to be honest with you," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I've been feeling really uncomfortable with how things have been going with the wedding planning." She furrowed her brows. "What do you mean? We've been having fun, haven't we?" "I thought we were," I replied. "But I feel like you've been taking over in a way that I didn't ask for. You've been making decisions about the wedding without asking me first. And I'm starting to feel like it's not about my wedding anymore. It's about what you want." "Ooh." She blinked, clearly surprised. "I'm just trying to help. I want everything to be perfect for you. You're my best friend, and this day is huge. I thought we were on the same page." "I know you're trying to help," I said, feeling my frustration rise. "But this isn't your day to control. I need my wedding to reflect us, not just what you think is best. It's about me and my fiancé, not a set of perfect photos. and I don't want anyone turning my wedding into their own personal photo shoot. The silence between us was deafening. I could see her jaw tightening as she processed what I had said. For a moment, I thought she might try to argue, but instead, she just sat back in her chair, looking at me. "So, what are you saying? That I'm not welcome to be part of it?" she asked, her voice cool. "No, I'm saying that I want your support in making this day about what I want," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You're my best friend, Jessica, but I need you to respect my boundaries. If you can't do that, then I don't know how we can move forward." She stared at me, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. It was almost like she didn't fully understand what I was asking. "You're really going to do this? Over a few photos?" "It's not about the photos," I said, shaking my head. "It's about respect. You've been pushing my limits, and I can't keep letting you walk all over me." The room felt suffocating in that moment. It wasn't just a disagreement. It felt like the end of something. I had stood up for myself, but I also knew it could cost me the friendship I had spent years building. Jessica didn't say anything for a long while. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, almost defeated. "I didn't mean to make you feel this way. I thought I was helping, but I see now that I've been selfish." I nodded, feeling a heavy weight lift off my shoulders. "I know you didn't mean it like that, but I needed you to understand." For a moment, we just sat there in silence, both of us processing the conversation. It wasn't easy, but I knew that this was the only way forward. I wasn't going to allow my wedding to be overshadowed by anyone else's expectations. After our confrontation, I didn't expect everything to magically improve. I knew that even though Jessica had apologized, there were still a lot of emotions to work through. She had been my best friend for years, but I felt like I was standing up for myself in a way I hadn't before, and it wasn't easy. The next few days were tense. Jessica seemed distant, but she didn't avoid me. She sent me a few messages, mostly apologizing again and explaining that she hadn't meant to overstep. But it was hard to tell if she truly understood what had happened or if she was just trying to smooth things over. I appreciated the effort, but I wasn't sure if things would ever be the same. My wedding day was rapidly approaching, and the stress of everything was taking a toll on me. There were still 1,000 little things to do, but all I could think about was the awkward space between Jessica and me. I wanted her to be a part of my special day, but I didn't want her to feel like it was her wedding too. I knew I needed to find a way to make things right, but I wasn't sure where to start. Then, just a few days before the big day, Jessica reached out to me again. This time, her tone was different, more humble, more genuine. "I want to make this right, and I know I've messed up," she wrote. "I don't want to bring more drama to your wedding, and I definitely don't want you to think I'm trying to steal the spotlight. I just want to be there for you, in whatever way you need me." Reading her message, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. I had wanted this, an acknowledgement of what had happened, but a part of me wasn't sure if I could trust her just yet. Still, I knew I needed to make a decision before the wedding. I didn't want any more tension between us on the day that was supposed to be about celebrating love and happiness. I called her later that evening, and we talked for the first time since our confrontation. It wasn't a long conversation, but it was enough to clear the air. She assured me that she understood my boundaries and promised she wouldn't make any more demands or try to take over the day. She just wanted to be there for me as my friend and maid of honor without trying to take the spotlight. By the time the wedding day arrived, things were still a bit awkward, but the tension had lightened. Jessica showed up early, helped with the last-minute details, and didn't make any attempts to take over or push her agenda. She was present and supportive, which was all I really needed. The wedding was beautiful, everything I had hoped for. Jessica stood by my side, and despite the earlier issues, I could see that she was genuinely happy for me. She respected my wishes, and I felt like, for the first time in weeks, we were on the same page again. As I stood at the altar, exchanging vows with my fiancé, I couldn't help but glance at Jessica. She was there, just as she always had been, a constant in my life, despite the rocky road we'd been on recently. Watching her smile at me, I realized how much she truly meant to me, despite everything. She had been there for me through the highs and the lows, and even though things had gotten complicated, she was still my best friend. The wedding ceremony was everything I had dreamed of. I walked down the aisle with a calm sense of certainty, knowing that I had made the right choice in both my partner and my decision to stand up for myself. The day was about celebrating love, our love, and nothing else mattered. The tension between Jessica and me had faded into the background, replaced by the joy of the moment. But after the ceremony, I found myself thinking more about Jessica than I thought I would. The whole time, I had been nervous about the potential drama, the awkwardness of having her there after everything that had happened. Yet, when the ceremony was over, I realized how important it was to have her by my side. The reception was next, and as I made my way around talking to family and friends, I could feel the weight of the last few weeks lifting off my shoulders. Jessica was by my side, helping me organize everything, and it was like nothing had changed. It felt like we were back to our old selves, even though a part of me knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. Later in the evening, Jessica pulled me aside for a quiet moment. We stepped outside to the balcony of the venue, and she looked at me with a sincerity that I hadn't seen in weeks. "I just want to thank you," she said, her voice soft, "for giving me another chance. I know I've made mistakes, but I promise, I'm not going to overstep again. I've learned my lesson." I felt a knot in my stomach. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the acknowledgement of everything that had happened, and while I wasn't fully ready to forget everything, I realized that I had made the right choice in allowing her back into my life. The road to rebuilding trust wasn't over, but we were both on the path now. "I'm glad you're here," I said, my voice steady but warm, "but I need you to understand that this is my day. I'm glad we're moving forward, but I can't let my wedding become about anything other than what we've planned together." She nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I understand, and I'm really happy for you, truly." It was in that moment that I realized something important. Friendships, like relationships, are about communication, respect, and understanding. I wasn't just protecting my wedding, I was protecting my boundaries, and in doing so, I was also protecting the friendship I valued so deeply. Maybe that was the most important lesson of all. After the wedding, I found myself reflecting on how things had gone. It wasn't just the wedding day that mattered, it was the journey we had taken to get there. In the weeks that followed, Jessica and I continued to rebuild our friendship. There were still moments of tension, but we both worked hard to navigate the delicate balance between support and space. It wasn't easy, but I felt like we were making progress. A few months after the wedding, Jessica invited me over for a coffee, and I could tell something was different. She had been quieter lately, and I wasn't sure what was going on. I knew that after everything we'd been through, there was still a chance for things to either improve or fall apart. As much as I wanted to move on from the tension, I was still nervous about what would happen next. When I arrived at her apartment, she greeted me with a warm smile, but her eyes were a little tired, like she had been carrying something heavy for a while. We sat down, and for the first time in a long time, I noticed how much had changed in both of us. I wasn't the same person I was before the wedding, and neither was she. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," she started, her voice unsteady, "and I need to apologize again. I know I've hurt you, and I can't keep avoiding it. I've realized that I've been so focused on my own needs and insecurities that I lost sight of the bigger picture, your happiness, your wedding, and your boundaries. I thought I could fix things by pushing for what I wanted, but I was wrong." Her words hit me hard, and I felt a lump form in my throat. This was the apology I had been waiting for, the one that went beyond the surface and acknowledged the pain caused by her actions. She wasn't just apologizing for the wedding, she was acknowledging her own flaws, something that I had been longing for her to do. "I know I messed up, and I'm really sorry for making it about me," she continued. "I think I've been struggling with my own self-worth, and I took it out on you. I didn't mean to hurt you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." I sat there for a moment, processing everything she was saying. I could feel the sincerity in her words, and I knew she wasn't just offering empty promises, but there was a part of me that still felt hesitant. Trust takes time to rebuild, and I wasn't sure if I could let go of the hurt so quickly. "I appreciate you saying that, Sarah," I replied, my voice soft. "But I'm still not sure if I can fully let go of what happened. It's going to take time for me to trust you again, but I'm willing to work through it." We both sat in silence for a while, the weight of the conversation hanging between us. The room felt heavy with unspoken words, but also with the potential for healing. I could see that we were both in a place of vulnerability, and for the first time in months, I felt like we were on the same page. "I get it," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I'm serious about this, about us. I don't want to lose our friendship." For the first time, I felt like I was ready to take the next step forward. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight, but I was willing to try. After our heart-to-heart, things between Jessica and me started to slowly improve. It wasn't like the past months had never happened, and there were still moments where I felt that underlying tension, but for the first time since the wedding, I felt like we were moving in the right direction. We started spending more time together, though things weren't exactly the same as they had been before the wedding. I had to be honest with myself. I still had doubts. Jessica had apologized, but could I really trust her again? Would she respect my boundaries moving forward, or was this just a temporary change? I didn't know the answers, but I decided to give it a shot. After all, I had been through enough with her that I knew she wasn't a bad person, just someone who had made some poor decisions and needed to grow. It was a few weeks after our conversation that Jessica invited me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant we used to love. I had been hesitant to accept at first, worried that the old patterns would resurface. But this time, I wanted to try. I wanted to see if we could truly heal and move forward. When I arrived, Jessica was already seated, looking up at me with a warm smile. For the first time in a long time, I saw her as my best friend again, not just someone who had hurt me, but someone who was genuinely trying to make amends. We chatted about everything and nothing, picking up the pieces of our friendship that had been left shattered after the wedding. The conversation was easy, light, and even fun. It felt almost like old times. But every so often I'd catch myself reflecting on the past, the wedding, the photo shoots, the tension, and I wondered if it would ever truly go away. But then, as we shared dessert, Jessica looked at me, a serious expression on her face. "I've been thinking," she started. "I know I hurt you before, and I want you to know that I'm still working on myself. I've been going to therapy to figure out why I acted the way I did, and it's made me realize a lot about how I handle my emotions and boundaries. I'm really trying to be better." I looked at her, surprised. It hadn't occurred to me that she was taking such proactive steps to work on herself. In that moment, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this friendship could survive. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wouldn't be without its bumps. But the fact that Jessica was taking responsibility and making efforts to change gave me hope. "I'm proud of you, Jess," I said softly. "I didn't expect this from you, but I'm glad you're doing this. I think we're both learning from this, and maybe that's the best thing that could come out of everything." She smiled, her eyes a little teary. "I just want to be someone you can trust again. You're too important to me to let this be the end." And for the first time in a long time, I felt a wave of relief. Maybe there was hope for us after all. It was going to take time, but I knew that we both wanted to get there. The months following our conversation were a delicate balancing act. Jessica was genuinely trying to prove herself, and I could see it in the small things she did, respecting my boundaries, being more mindful of her actions, and showing up when she said she would. But even though I appreciated her efforts, there were still moments of doubt. Could I really trust her again after everything that happened? And more importantly, could our friendship ever be the same as it was before the wedding? Things seemed to be going well at first, but there was one situation that would put our renewed friendship to the test. A few months after our dinner, I was planning a small get-together with some friends for a celebration. I sent out invites, and Jessica was, of course, on the guest list. But a few days before the event, I received a text from her that stopped me in my tracks. "Hey, I hope you don't mind, but I invited a couple of people to your gathering. I just thought it'd be nice if we could expand it a bit." My heart dropped. I had planned the gathering for a select group of people, close friends, people I was comfortable with, and I had made it clear to everyone that the event was going to be small. I wasn't opposed to having more people, but this wasn't the time for that. I had already put so much effort into making it work with the people I had invited. I immediately felt my trust begin to erode. I had asked Jessica to respect my boundaries, to stop overstepping, and yet here she was, once again, disregarding my wishes. I couldn't help but feel like the old patterns were starting to creep back in. Was I being unreasonable, or was this the moment when I had to stand my ground once again? I took a deep breath and texted her back. "Jessica, I really appreciate the enthusiasm, but I was hoping to keep this small. I need this event to stay as planned, and I really hope you understand." I waited for her response, the anxiety gnawing at me. The last thing I wanted was another confrontation, but I also knew I couldn't keep letting her dictate how things went. This was my celebration, and I had to stay firm in what I wanted. She replied almost immediately, her message less upbeat than usual. "I'm sorry, I should have asked you first. I understand, and I'll let it be." Despite her apology, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Was she really understanding my boundaries, or was she just saying what I wanted to hear? That night, I felt a familiar sense of unease creeping back. Was I making a mistake by letting her back into my life? Was I setting myself up for disappointment? As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The unease I'd been carrying for weeks was heavier now, and I couldn't ignore the tension in the air. I kept replaying the conversation with Jessica in my mind, her insistence on pushing her way into my wedding plans, her disregard for my boundaries. Now, standing in my own gathering, I could feel it happening again. Jessica had arrived a bit late, and though she was her usual bubbly self, I noticed that her energy seemed more frenetic, almost like she was trying too hard. She greeted everyone with a hug, and her eyes searched the room for approval. My mind raced. Was she trying to make this about her, like she had done with my wedding? I tried to ignore it at first, but then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. From across the room, I saw Jessica talking to a small group of strangers. They were laughing, chatting, and as I moved closer, I overheard part of their conversation. She's probably still upset about her wedding, you know? But at least we get to have fun here, right? Her words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt a mixture of anger and hurt, not just because she was discussing my wedding in such a dismissive way, but because I had given her so many chances to understand and respect my boundaries, and she was still crossing them. My heart raced, and before I knew it, my feet carried me toward her. I could feel my hands shaking, my throat tight with emotion. This was the moment. I wasn't going to let her manipulate this situation any longer. "Jessica," I said, my voice calm but firm, "we need to talk." She looked at me, startled by my tone, and excused herself from the conversation. "What's going on?" she asked, her smile faltering. "Do you think it's funny?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "My wedding, my life, me being the butt of a joke for your entertainment? It's clear you're still making everything about you." She blinked, clearly shocked by the accusation. "What do you mean?" "You've been taking over everything, and tonight you crossed the line again. This isn't just about photos or the wedding, it's about the way you've been treating me, disregarding my feelings, and turning everything into your own personal show." Her face flushed as she tried to protest, but I wasn't giving in. "I've tried to give you space. I've tried to make this work, but I'm done. I've had enough." Jessica looked at me, her eyes filled with confusion and hurt, but I could see that she was finally starting to understand. "So, you want me to leave?" she asked, her voice small. I nodded, my heart heavy. "Yes. I need you to leave. I've made my decision." For a moment, she stood frozen, as if unsure how to react, and then, without a word, she turned and walked out of the room. I watched her go, a strange mixture of relief and sadness settling in my chest. It was over. The room seemed quieter, lighter even, after she left. My guests resumed their conversations, and though I felt the sting of having to make such a harsh decision, I knew it was the right one. This wasn't just about my wedding. It was about my life. I needed people who respected me, my boundaries, and my decisions. Looking back on everything, I know I made the right choice, but it wasn't easy. It's hard to stand up to people you care about, especially when they've been part of your life for so long. But sometimes standing up for yourself is the only way to protect your peace and your happiness. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to set boundaries with a friend or family member, I'd love to hear your experience. How did you handle it? Did you have to make tough decisions, and how did they affect your relationship? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.